Hello and welcome to our final note-taking experience about hands. This is going to be notes page number 4, closed hand and or fist. We are talking about how we begin with construction lines and then we move into something called modified contour lines. We're going to spend the most time on this drawing. By the end, you should have something that looks like this, right? We're going to close our hand up and we're going to build in the construction, and then we're going to spend some quality time building in our modified contour lines. Just to remind you of where we have been, we started with shape and form. Then we did the flat hand, talking about the construction of the palm and the fingers and the bones inside. Then we moved into the bent finger, still looking at construction lines, getting into a little bit of detail. Our focus on this was to notice that the tops of our fingers are flat, the bottoms are curved, and now we're going to put that together a little bit differently with the closed hand and or fist. Okay, I want you to be working on blank white printer paper as always, and you should be using a Dixon Ticonderoga number 2 pencil. I am using our 4B pencil because I want it to look nice and dark for the camera. At the end of this experience, you know to take a picture and drop it into Schoology in the appropriate assignment, which will be called note sheet number 4, closed hand / fist. Okay, so go ahead and set yourself up. Write this up at the top. Please be sure you're drawing with me. This is not something that you're just going to watch. You're going to be drawing with me. All right, and then you're going to set yourself up. I am right-handed, so I'm going to be drawing with my right hand. So I am going to be looking and drawing my left hand. So if I have my hand here, I'm going to just stretch it out. I've been drawing all day. I'm going to stretch it out, and then I'm going to close my hand over so I can see all of my fingers, right? I don't want to make this really intense fist, right? I don't want to hide my thumb inside. I don't want to do this and really stress out my hand because we're going to be drawing this for a really long time, and that's going to be hard to maintain. It's like if you're smiling forever in a picture, you're like, did you take the picture yet? Right? And you want to stop smiling. That aggressive stance is going to be exhausting for your hand. Okay, so instead I want you to stretch your hand out. Just take your hand like a mitten, fold it over, right? And then rest your thumb, whatever's comfortable on the side. I'm going to do something like this. So I'm going to have a little bit of a space from my direction there in between my thumb and my fingers. If you wanted to fold it up top or put it on front, that's fine, as long as you're comfortable and it's not hidden. Do not do that. Okay, so fold that over. Before we begin, I want to remind you that you're drawing your own hand. You're not just copying what I'm doing. I want you to look at your own hand while you're doing it. So if you have different shaped fingers than I do, or a wider palm or more space over here, I want to see that reflected in your drawing. I also want to let you know that I broke this hand when I was in high school, right before the prom. I went sleigh riding and I broke this bone right in here, my middle finger right inside. And when they cast it, they put all these fingers together in a cast, and I could use these 2 fingers. But because of that, do you see how my hand naturally opens up here, right? So I'm going to be drawing what I see, which is going to be this finger is going to be slightly separated from those. That doesn't happen on my other hand. And it probably doesn't happen to yours because you didn't break your hand, hopefully. Wasn't fun. Don't recommend. But if I close my hand naturally, I have a little bit of space there. Okay, so I'm going to depict that in my drawing. When I look at this though, what shape comes to mind? What form? Let me pull that over. What form comes to mind when I'm looking at this? Is it still a cube? A flattened cube? Not really. Here, I'm looking at the whole hand, right? And here I'm seeing this as being more of a sphere. When I look at the sphere though, I'm seeing that it's sort of like it's like an egg shape to account for my thumb. If I remove my thumb from the equation, it's sort of a taller oval sphere this way. So whatever kind of sphere you want to draw, that's up to you. I am going to start right in the middle, and I am going to draw actual size, right? I don't want to trace, I can't trace this, but I want to draw as actual size as I can. So I'm going to whatever. I'm going to go ahead and drop in a sphere, a rough sphere, sort of like that, right? Folding that over, and I'm going to see that I have like my thumb sort of happening over here a little bit. Maybe I can do that to add my thumb in. Okay. And then the next thing I want you to think about is how your wrist is coming down. If I pull up my sleeve a little bit, I'm going to see that my wrist is a little bit thinner. If I measure this, it's thinner than my hand, right? This comes down, but it is sort of like taking up the whole base of my hand. So sort of like here, and there. I'm doing construction lines right now, right? So I've got my sphere. I have this little peak for my thumb, roughly, maybe even, look at that. It comes over sort of a lot. And all of these lines I'm drawing really lightly. Hopefully you can see them on the camera. Drawing really lightly because I'm going to erase them. We're not. We're going to keep them because I want to see that you're learning, that you're looking at this, right? But if I were really drawing a final drawing, I would erase those lines. So I'm going to keep them really, really light. If you're drawing digitally, if you want to be a digital artist, you would do this on a separate layer, right? You'd have a layer with your construction lines, and then you'd build up your modified contour lines afterwards. We're going to talk about that later in our year when we work on the iPads. All right, so I've got the general shape of my fist. I have the general shape of my cylindrical wrist. I can think of that like a cylinder if I wanted to. I don't really need to think about that right now. The next thing I want you to observe is like the flap of your fingers. So if I think of this as one big flap that comes down, like I asked you to close your hand, if all those fingers were glued together, it would be sort of like this triangle shape. Do you see that? All right, that triangle-y shape starting sort of up here. And look at how much space you have there. Sort of build that in a little bit. And look at this space from the wrist to the fingers and try and judge that space as best you can. We're going to spend this period on this drawing only. If we were going to spend more time on this, I would really, if this were a final drawing, we're taking notes. If this were a final drawing, before I move on from any one construction line towards my modified contour, I really want to make sure these things are all correct. I'm just roughing this in, and that's all I'm expecting of you today as well. Okay, so there's like my flipper. And I want you to notice something. Where are my fingers pointing? Do you see how they're all converging here and pointing towards what we talked about, that carpal tunnel? Let me pull that over. We talked about how all these lines converge here, correct? So when I close my hand, they're all going to point back there, right? They're not all, I can't even do it because it doesn't work, right? They're not pointed like straight arrows back towards your body. They're converging in. So I want to call that to your attention. Before we talk, well, let's do that, right? So let's break up this space into our 4 sections. If you wanted to draw in like we did before, sort of the ovals you want, that's fine. I'm just going to rough in. I see like a finger is sort of here, more or less. I see here and there. Does that look about right? More or less. Which finger is the longest? When my hand was like this, we noticed our middle finger was the longest, right? When I close my hand like this, which finger is the longest? My ring finger is actually the longest. Look at that. It comes down further than this one. And I can see this is like sort of at a slant from different angles. I'm closing it up just naturally, and it's a little bit slanted. So I'm going to depict that over here. And that sort of is happening already because we have our arch for our thumb. All right, so I'm going to rough out where the bottom of these things go. I think my ring finger is going to live down here. This one is slightly longer than that one. The middle finger. And then my pointer finger is a lot higher. Okay, and then look at that pinky, so much higher. And it's sort of hidden, do you see that? It's hidden behind the others right now. So I have my general fingers. And then I'm going to start to think about my thumb. Now look at this whole joint. Remember we talked about that triangle piece that's happening on the side? That whole joint is over there. So I'm thinking of this triangle piece over this way. So this is coming up. It's coming over to about where my fingers are, a little bit higher. So that looks about right. And then from here, it's going straight up. And then I'm resting it on the top of my, on the side top of my pointer finger. it's sort of swooping down. Do you see that? I'm sorry, up, swooping up. So it's sort of doing one of these, right? And I'm gonna start to, I see the top of that, and then it sort of gets smushed with my finger. And then this is coming at that joint, like we talked about with our bent finger. Seeing it there, seeing this here, and there-ish. My angle is changing because I'm moving my hand around, right? Sort of like that, more or less. And what we're about to do now, here's our construction. We've finished our construction point of this, and now we're going to move into our modified contour lines. But I need to define this word for you. Can you see it? I need to define this word for you, modified contour lines. So what is a contour line? Please write this at the bottom. A contour line is an outline. It's depicting the edge. So the edge of where my thumb is. We can have contour outlines all the way around, but also inside. And here's another contour line of my wrinkles, right? So those are edges. It's depicting an edge. Modified contour line is when you adjust or edit your contour lines, your outlines. So you're adjusting, you're editing as you go. So you see me here, I started adding my contour lines. These are modified contour lines. I'm making adjustments. I'm like, oh, that's too thick, that's too skinny, and I'm changing it as I go. Okay, so we're doing modified contour lines. Later in the week, we're gonna do something called blind contour line, and I'm excited to share that with you. But right now, we are talking modified. Okay, so that's what I want you to do for the rest of this period. I want you to work just on this hand. I'm going to keep developing it here and narrating a little bit as I go, but I'm going to give you the whole period. Even when I'm done, you should spend about 40 minutes developing your modified contour lines of this image. All right, but let's keep discussing this. Okay, so I've got my thumb, I have my 4 fingers in here. And now I want to start to build in the details of my fingers. You might be tempted right now to throw in those nails, right? Your fingernails, but that's the last thing we're going to do. Maybe the wrinkles you want to do, right? If you've got hair on your fingers, we all do. Sometimes it's more prominent than others, but we need to build in our fingers first, right? Now look at the tops of your knuckles. Do you see that? I want to show you something. I'm going to grab over a sticky note. The tops of each knuckle. Do you see how it is flat for me on top? And then each side sort of slopes down until it meets the other side. And then it's going to go to the next. Do you see that right here? Right? Look at that V, that Y. We talked about a V and a Y right there. Same thing up top. That's how a little detail, it's going to make this much more realistic, the little V's and the little Y's. So let's look at that more closely. So if I fold my hand gently, I know I'm moving around a lot. I probably should not do that, but I'm still going to. On these lines, we'll start here. On these lines, between your fingers, put little V's, please. And already, you can see it happening, can't you? Little V's. Put a little slope over here. This slope over here is going to be meeting our thumb. And then play connect the dots, right? Arch this over. Have it make sense. There we go, the tops of our fingers. Right? And then we're going to start to develop our fingers here. I want you to notice which ones are behind the others. I remember I broke my hand, so this guy is all on his own. He can do whatever he wants over here, right? Where these guys are sort of going to be a flipper for me. But if we look at that, which one's in front of the other, minus this. This finger is on top of that one. My middle finger is on top of my ring finger. my ring finger's on top of my pinky. And it's really, my pinky is really turning in. Do you see that? It's turning in. You can only sort of see half of it. All right, so let's go ahead and build those in. Maybe you want to further develop the bottom of each finger first. And here you're going to see that process of modified contour line. Let me really look for a second. It's hard to draw and talk at the same time. Modify, look, edit. Pulling up some of that value so it makes more sense to me, because this is coming over here for me. That one I think I have to play with a little bit more. Notice the language that I use when I'm drawing. Play, like I'm gonna play with this line, right? I'm never gonna talk about my work as being, oh, this is wrong. I'm playing with it. I'm gonna fix it in that way. Not that it's wrong, I'm just gonna work on it. Now I'm seeing sort of a little bit of foreshortening. This is sort of coming this way, and then it sort of goes that way from the angle that I'm seeing. Do what you see, not what I'm drawing, because it might be a little bit different for you. Here I see this line, that line, and that line. Now I'm ready to sort of build in my nails. I see that one. Something like that. So for the sake of this video, I'm going to stop around now. But I do want to add in something else. So we've been talking about contour line, modified contour line. I'm making modifications as I go. To make a modification, an adjustment, an edit, I'm looking back and forth. I'm saying, oh, that doesn't look right. Oh, change that, right? Let me fix this. Let me adjust and edit what I'm looking at. And I could spend the next 5 hours on this and really get it right. I'm not asking you to do that. I'm asking you to spend about 40 minutes, because that's the length of our class. We will have an opportunity to draw more on something later, but I want to talk about our value one more time. I'm sorry, our shading. Where'd that paper go? Here it is. Think about our light source. If our light source were up here, coming down, how would it play across this hand? Well, we talked about this being a sphere. So the darkest section is going to be bright over here. Our hand is going to be in shadow over here. This is a cylinder. Our hand is going to have our area of shadow on this side. The core would be through here, the core in there maybe. But each finger is also a cylinder. So on each side of our fingers, we're going to have shadow, especially if it's underneath. So I'm going to have to add this shadow underneath. And then this, look at, you see the shadow coming over there? And a little bit here. And in there especially, right? And that would be how we put this information together, more or less. Okay, so when you're done, when you get to this level, I want you to take a photo and submit it to Schoology for us. All right, that's where we're going to stop with this lesson. Our next lesson is going to involve the proportions of the face. We're going to be looking in the mirror, in the camera. We're going to be looking at your family members or your classmates if you're in person, that sort of thing. All right, I'll see you next time.